The skies over Centauri Prime burned red as the Varnax ships broke through the defensive line. The colony's warning sirens wailed across the landscape, their sound mixing with the screams of people running for shelter. On the main command deck of Centauri Defense Station Alpha, Communications Officer Lisa Johnson stared at her screen in horror. "They're targeting civilian centers first," she said, her voice shaking. The massive black ships moved with terrifying purpose, their organic-looking hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Just like the reports from the outer systems, Station Commander Peter Bell gripped the edge of the tactical display. His knuckles turned white as another settlement disappeared from the grid. "Get that emergency beacon activated now. Earth needs to see what's happening here." Lisa worked frantically at her console. The Varnax were already jamming standard communications channels. But the emergency quantum beacon operated on principles they hadn't yet learned to block. "Beacon active, sir. Transmitting live feed." The station shuddered as the first enemy weapons found their range. Warning lights flashed across every console. "How many civilians made it to the shelters?" Bell asked. Operations Officer Sam Green checked his terminal. "Maybe 40%. The attack came too fast." Bell nodded grimly. "Then we buy them as much time as we can. All defense platforms. Concentrate fire on the lead ships." The station's weapons opened fire, joined by the remaining orbital defenses. Bright energy beams lanced out toward the Varnax fleet. Most dissipated harmlessly against their strange, shifting shields. But one shot found a weak point, and a smaller enemy vessel exploded in a burst of green fire. The victory was short-lived. The largest Varnax ship turned its attention to the station. Its front section opened like a blooming flower, revealing a pulsing core of sickly light. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "the beacon is still transmitting. Earth will see everything." Bell straightened his uniform. "Good. They need to understand what we're facing." He looked around at his crew, brave men and women who knew what was coming. "It's been an honor serving with all of you." The enemy weapon fired. The command deck erupted in flames and the transmission cut to static. 10 hours later, in the crisis room beneath Earth's United Government headquarters in Geneva, Admiral Alan Shepard watched the Centauri footage for the 5th time. His weathered face revealed nothing, but his eyes burned with controlled anger. "Play it again," he ordered. The aide looking at him seemed concerned. "Sir, we've analyzed every frame. There's nothing new to—" "Play it again," Shepard repeated. This time his tone left no room for argument. The terrible images played out once more. The Varnax ships, the systematic destruction, the final moments of Defense Station Alpha. Shepard paused the recording at a specific frame, showing one of the alien vessels clearly. "There," he said, pointing to a pattern on the ship's hull. "That's the same marking we saw in the intelligence briefings from the Talaxians. This is definitely the Varnax." The door opened and Ambassador William Carter walked in. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loose and shirt wrinkled. He had come straight from the emergency Galactic Concord session. "How bad was it?" Shepard asked, already guessing the answer. Carter dropped heavily into a chair. "They're not going to help us. The Concord has classified this as a contained regional conflict and is recommending a quarantine approach." "Quarantine?" The word came out as a growl. "Over 2 million dead on Centauri alone, and they want to quarantine us?" "They're scared, Alan." Carter rubbed his eyes. "The Varnax have destroyed over 50 civilizations in the last century. No one has been able to stop them. The core worlds are thinking about their own survival now." Shepard's hand formed a fist on the table. "So they'll just write off Earth and all our colonies? After all the diplomatic work you've done?" "To them, we're still newcomers. Unpredictable and primitive." Carter looked up, his expression grim. "They actually suggested it might be for the best. Some of the older species still consider us dangerous." Shepard was quiet for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his communication device. "This is Admiral Shepard. Get me a secure line to Director Holt at Whisper Base. Authorization code, Sierra 9 Delta 7. Carter sat up straighter. "You're activating the Nemesis project? It hasn't completed final testing." "We're out of time," Shepard said. "The Varnax fleet will reach the Parker colony next. After that, it's a straight path to Earth." The Nemesis is our only chance. The Conquered doesn't know about it, Carter said. If we deploy it without their approval, if we don't deploy it, there won't be any humans left to worry about Conquered regulations. Shepard's device beeped as the connection was made. Gregory, this is Shepard. Initiate final preparation. Protocols. The Nemesis launches in 48 hours. On Whisper Base, buried deep within asteroid RQ-397, Dr. Elizabeth Murray watched as technicians made final adjustments to the dimensional inverter, the heart of the Nemesis's weapon system. The massive device hummed with power, blue-white energy, dancing across its surface. We haven't tested it at full capacity, she told Director Gregory Holt, who stood beside her in the observation room. The mathematics say it will work, but the mathematics will have to be enough, Holt replied. His calm voice contrasted with the urgency around them. Everywhere, base personnel were rushing to complete preparations 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Admiral Shepard has confirmed the Varnacs are on the move. We launch tomorrow. Murray nodded. As the chief scientist on the project, she understood the risks better than anyone. The technology they had developed by studying that mysterious derelict vessel pushed the boundaries of known physics. If it worked, it could save humanity. If it failed, Captain Powell is ready for the final briefing, Holt said. You should be there. No one understands the theoretical principles like you do. They walked through the bustling corridors of the base. 15 years of secret work was culminating in these frantic hours. Project Nemesis had consumed Murray's career, her marriage, and more sleepless nights than she could count. Now everything depended on it. In the command center, Captain Sandra Powell stood studying tactical displays. At 42, she was older than most ship commanders, but her experience was unmatched. She had been selected from thousands of candidates, not just for her combat record, but for her adaptability and quick thinking. Powell looked up as they entered. Doctor, Director, please tell me our ship is ready to fight. Murray stepped forward. The Nemesis is the most advanced vessel ever created. By human hands, Captain. But I need you to understand its limitations. The Phantom Drive will get you behind enemy lines undetected, but it can only be used twice before requiring a complete reactor reset. Powell nodded. And the main weapon system? The dimensional inverter targets the quantum communication network, the Varnac's use. Our simulations suggest it will disrupt their hive mind coordination. But it's all theoretical until we see it in action. Theoretical is all we have, Powell said. She turned to face the window overlooking the massive construction bay. There, suspended in a web of scaffolding, waited the ESS Nemesis. Sleek and dangerous, its dark hull absorbed the light much like the Varnac's ships did. But this darkness was human-made, a protection against enemy sensors. One ship, Powell said quietly. One ship against an empire that has destroyed 50 civilizations. Murray followed her gaze. One is all we need, Captain. If we're right about how they function. Outside the window, the final preparations continued, as humanity placed its hopes in a single warship and the 157 brave souls who would crew it. Captain Sandra Powell walked through the nearly completed ESS Nemesis, running her hand along the smooth corridor walls. Despite the rush to launch, every detail of the ship had been crafted with care. This vessel represented the best of human engineering, science, and determination. Captain on deck, called Lieutenant Jason Morris as Powell entered the bridge. The crew stopped their work and stood at attention. As you were, Powell said. She moved to the captain's chair, but did not sit. Instead, she studied the faces of her bridge crew. Each person had been selected from thousands of candidates representing the best minds Earth had to offer. Many had left behind families, knowing they might never return. Final systems check in 30 minutes, she announced. Launch in 3 hours. I know that's sooner than any of us expected, but the Varnacs aren't waiting, so neither can we. Navigation. Officer Diane Foster looked up from her station. Captain, the Phantom Drive calibration is still showing some fluctuations. Dr. Murray's team is working on it, but we launch in 3 hours, Lieutenant. Powell repeated firmly. Ready or not? As the crew returned to their tasks with renewed urgency, Powell left the bridge and headed to engineering. The heart of the Nemesis, what made it unique among human ships, lay in its revolutionary systems, and she needed to be certain they would function when needed. In the main engineering bay, Dr. Elizabeth Murray stood surrounded by holographic displays showing the inner workings of the Phantom Drive. Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez worked beside her, her fingers moving quickly across control panels. "The power flow is still unstable," Martinez said. "We're seeing energy spikes that shouldn't be there." Murray nodded. "The drive was designed to be built in 3 more weeks. We're pushing it to operate before it's ready." Powell entered the engineering bay. "How bad is it, Doctor?" Murray turned to face the captain. "The Phantom Drive will work, but I can't guarantee for how long. The power requirements are massive. We've never tested it with a full-size ship." "Will it get us to Proxima Centauri undetected?" "Yes," Murray said after a moment's hesitation. "But the return trip will be riskier. The drive wasn't designed for multiple jumps without a complete cooldown period." Powell accepted this with a nod. "We might not need a return trip if we fail. Keep working on it. I need that drive as stable as possible." As Powell left, Martinez looked at Murray. "She knows this is practically a suicide mission, right?" Murray watched the captain's retreating form. "She's known since she accepted command. So has every person on this ship." In the Weapons Control Center, 2 decks below, Weapons Officer Jason Morris supervised the loading of conventional missiles. The Nemesis carried an array of traditional weapons alongside its experimental systems, a backup in case the dimensional inverter failed. Security Chief Patricia Nelson joined him, her team of Special Forces soldiers following behind. "My people need access to the armory," she said. "If we're going up against the Varnax, we need to be prepared for boarding actions." Morris raised an eyebrow. "Boarding actions? The plan is to hit them with the inverter from a distance." "Plans change in battle," Nelson replied flatly. "I want my team ready for anything." Morris nodded and entered the access code to the ship's armory. Nelson's team filed in, each specialist selecting weapons with practiced efficiency. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Each had undergone extensive genetic and cybernetic enhancement, another secret project that would have horrified the Mihi Galactic Concord if they knew. Nelson herself checked a pulse rifle, her movements precise. "The Varnax have never faced humans in direct combat," she said. "They might be in for a surprise." In his private quarters, Intelligence Officer Kevin Douglas reviewed the limited data available on Varnax ships. Most came from distant observations or brief encounters. No one had gotten close enough to study their technology and survived. Yet Douglas had found patterns in their behavior, clues to how they functioned as a collective. "Computer, run simulation Delta 7 again," he said. The holographic display showed the movement of Varnax ships during an attack on a Talaxian colony. The vessels moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. "Freeze frame at time, mark 1427, Douglas ordered. The display stopped, showing the moment when one Varnax ship was damaged by defensive fire. Immediately, 3 others adjusted their positions to protect it. "They're networked," Douglas muttered. "But how? Standard communication would have delays." A notification flashed on his screen. It was time for the final briefing. Douglas saved his work and headed for the command center. He had a theory, one that might prove crucial to their mission. Director Gregory Holt stood before the assembled ship's officers in the Nemesis briefing room. On the wall behind him, a display showed the current position of the Varnax fleet, already moving toward their next target after destroying the Centauri colony. "New Harmony fell 3 hours ago," Holt announced grimly. The destroyer USS Valor managed to evacuate some civilians before it was destroyed. Captain Frank Mitchell and his crew are being recommended for posthumous honors. A heavy silence filled the room. Many had known people stationed on New Harmony or on the Valor. "The Varnax will reach the Parker colony next," Holt continued. "After that, they have a clear path to Earth. This is why we're launching now, even though the Nemesis isn't fully complete." Powell stood. "My crew understands the risks, Director. We're ready." Holt nodded. Then I'll turn this briefing over to Intelligence Officer Douglas, who has developed the targeting strategy for the mission. Douglas took his place at the front of the room. The Varnaks operate as a hive mind, he began. Their ships move and fight with perfect coordination, but this strength is also a weakness. Our analysis suggests they use a form of quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across their fleet. He brought up images of various Varnaks vessels. One ship coordinates all others, the Hive Coordinator. It's larger than the others and stays protected in the center of their formation. If we can disrupt this command vessel, we may be able to throw their entire fleet into chaos. Powell leaned forward. How do we identify this coordinator? It has a unique energy signature, Douglas explained. Different from the other ships, it pulses at regular intervals, likely when it's sending commands to the fleet. Murray spoke up. That matches our theories about how the dimensional inverter should work. If we can target this coordinator directly, we might be able to shatter their entire command structure. Holt looked around the room. This is a long shot, but it's the only shot we have. Launch is in 90 minutes. To your stations. As the officers filed out, Powell remained behind with Holt. Once they were alone, she asked the question that had been on her mind. Did Admiral Shepard give us any specific orders if we succeed? Holt's expression was somber. Just one. Come home if you can. Earth will need the Nemesis if we're going to rebuild our place in the galaxy. Powell nodded. And if we fail? Then there might not be an Earth to come back to. Holt extended his hand. Good luck, Captain. They shook hands, firmly, both knowing this might be the last time they would meet. 90 minutes later, the massive doors of Whisper Base began to open. The ESS Nemesis, sleek and dangerous, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it, prepared for launch. Inside, the crew worked at their stations with focused determination. On the bridge, Powell took her seat in the captain's chair. All stations, report status. One by one, her officers confirmed their readiness. The ship hummed with power as its systems came fully online for the first time. Phantom drive charged and ready, Martinez reported from engineering. Powell took a deep breath. Navigation, set course for Proxima Centauri. Prepare for Phantom jump on my mark. Foster's hands moved across her console. Course laid in, Captain. Powell looked at the main view screen, which showed the asteroid field that had hidden their base for so many years. Beyond that field waited an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Mark, she said. The Nemesis vanished in a flash of blue-white energy, leaving behind only a quantum signature that faded within seconds. Humanity's last hope was on its way to battle. The Phantom jump ended with a flash of blue light. On the bridge of the ESS Nemesis, the crew blinked as their eyes adjusted. The main screen showed the darkness of space, dotted with stars. Position report, Captain Powell ordered. Navigation Officer Diane Foster checked her instruments. We've arrived at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, Captain. The Phantom jump was successful. Powell nodded. Any sign of Varnak ships? Communications Officer Eric Daniels worked at his station. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple energy signatures near the fourth planet. It's them, Captain. I count over 200 vessels. A tense silence fell over the bridge. 200 against 1. The odds seemed impossible. Activate stealth systems, Powell ordered. Let's get closer without being detected. Stealth systems online, reported Lieutenant Morris at the weapons station. But, Captain, the power draw is significant. Chief Martinez says we have maybe 2 hours before the reactors reach critical levels. Powell's expression remained calm. 2 hours will have to be enough. Mr. Douglas, are you able to identify the Hive Coordinator? Intelligence Officer Kevin Douglas studied his readings. Not yet, Captain. We need to get closer to analyze their energy patterns. Helm, take us in. 1/4 speed. Stay on the system's outer edge to mask our approach. As the Nemesis moved silently toward the Varnak's fleet, the crew worked with intense focus. They had trained for this mission for years, but now faced the reality of combat against an enemy that had destroyed dozens of civilizations. Captain, Daniel said suddenly. I'm picking up a distress signal. From the surface of the fourth planet. Powell turned sharply. Source? It's humans, sir. Survivors from the Parker colony. They're hiding in the deep mines. The Varnaks are systematically destroying the surface installations. Powell gripped the arms of her chair. How many survivors? Signal indicates approximately 3,000 civilians. They've been hiding for nearly a day. The Varnaks are using some kind of ground forces to hunt them down. Another impossible choice. Their mission was to target the Hive coordinator, not to attempt a rescue. Any diversion could compromise their only chance to stop the Varnaks. Maintain course, Powell said finally. If we succeed, we'll save not just those colonists, but billions more. We can't risk the mission. The bridge crew nodded grimly. They understood the math of war, even if it felt cold in the moment. In engineering, Chief Martinez monitored the power levels with growing concern. The stealth systems were drawing more energy than expected, and the reactors were running hot. We need to reduce power consumption, she told Dr. Murray, who had joined her in engineering for the approach. At this rate, we won't have enough energy left to power the dimensional inverter when we need it. Murray checked the readings. Can we shut down non-essential systems? Already done. The problem is the stealth field itself. It wasn't designed to shield a vessel this large. Murray thought for a moment. What if we modulate the field? Instead of a constant shield, we create a moving blind spot that stays between us and their ships. Martinez considered the idea. It would be tricky. If we time it wrong, we'd be visible for seconds at a time, but it would reduce the power draw by at least 30%. Martinez nodded slowly. I'll have to calculate it manually. The computer can't predict the field oscillation with enough precision. Do it, Murray said. I'll inform the captain. On the bridge, Powell received Murray's report with a mix of concern and relief. Do we have any choice, Doctor? Not if we want to have enough power for the inverter, Murray replied. Martinez is confident she can time the modulation to keep us hidden. Tell her to proceed. Mr. Douglas, any progress on identifying the coordinator? Douglas nodded. I think I've found it, Captain. The largest vessel near the center of their formation. It's emitting a distinct energy pattern that pulses every 47 seconds. The pattern matches what we believe to be command signals. Powell studied the tactical display. The Hive coordinator was massive, at least 20 kilometers long, surrounded by layers of protection. Getting close enough to target it seemed nearly impossible. Mr. Morris, what's the minimum range for the dimensional inverter to be effective? Morris checked his calculations. Based on Dr. Murray's specifications, we need to be within 50,000 kilometers. That means passing through their outer defensive screen. Powell considered their options. Even with the stealth systems, they'll detect us once we're that close. Douglas spoke up. Captain, I have an idea. The Varnak ships are communicating constantly through their quantum network. If we time our approach to coincide with one of the coordinator's command pulses, we might slip through during the system-wide update. It would be like moving during a blink. How narrow is that window? Maybe 3 seconds at most. We'd have to be precise. Powell nodded. It's our best option. How long until the next command pulse? 8 minutes, Captain. Prepare the dimensional inverter. Martinez will need to time the stealth field modulation perfectly with our approach. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role in the coming action. The Nemesis adjusted its course, accelerating slightly to reach the optimal position. All hands, battle stations, Powell ordered over the ship-wide comm. Prepare for possible enemy contact. Throughout the ship, crew members secured equipment and prepared for combat. In the Special Forces Bay, Security Chief Patricia Nelson briefed her team one final time. If we're detected, boarding parties are likely. The Varnaks will want to capture our technology intact. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. Her soldiers checked their weapons and armor. Unlike the rest of the crew, they wore specialized combat suits that enhanced their strength and speed. Each carried high-energy pulse weapons designed specifically for this mission. Remember your training, Nelson continued. The Varnaks are insectoid, with exoskeletons, Aim for the joint areas or the sensory clusters on what passes for their heads. 30 seconds to command pulse, Douglas announced on the bridge. Powell took a deep breath. All stations prepare for approach run. Mr. Morris, arm the dimensional inverter. Inverter armed and ready, Captain. 20 seconds. Martinez's voice came over the comm from engineering. Stealth field modulation synchronized with approach vector. Ready on your mark, Captain. 10 seconds. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of instruments. Every person held their breath. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark! The Nemesis surged forward, its engines pushing to maximum thrust. The stealth field fluctuated precisely, creating a moving blind spot that kept the ship hidden as it raced toward the center of the Varnak's fleet. On the main screen, the massive alien vessels grew larger. The Nemesis passed between two outer ships, so close that details of their organic-looking hulls were clearly visible. 15 seconds to weapons range, Morris reported. No sign they've detected us, Daniels added, his voice tense. The Hive Coordinator filled the screen now, its enormous bulk dwarfing the human vessel. Unlike the other ships, its surface pulsed with sickly green light, rhythmic and hypnotic. 10 seconds to weapons range. Energy spike! Daniels shouted suddenly. They've seen us! The nearest Varnak ships began to turn, weapon ports opening, along their hulls. 5 seconds. Evasive maneuvers, Powell ordered. Get us into range. The Nemesis twisted in space, avoiding the first volley of enemy fire. A glancing hit rocked the ship, alarms blaring through the corridors. We're in range, Morris announced. Fire the inverter, Powell commanded. Full power. Morris pressed the activation sequence. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the dimensional inverter came to life, its energy building to a crescendo before releasing in a wave that was invisible to the naked eye but devastating at the quantum level. The wave struck the Hive Coordinator directly. At first there seemed to be no effect. Then, the rhythmic pulsing of green light became erratic. The massive ship shuddered. Direct hit, Morris confirmed. The inverter is working. Throughout the Varnak's fleet, confusion spread. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly seemed lost. Some turned toward each other, others began firing randomly into space. It's working, Douglas said in amazement. Their command structure is collapsing. Powell allowed herself a small smile. Target their weapon systems with conventional missiles. Let's help the process along. The Nemesis fired a barrage of missiles at the nearest confused enemy vessels. Without their coordinated defenses, the strikes hit home with devastating effect. Captain, Daniels called out, I'm still receiving that distress signal from the surface. The Varnak's ground forces are continuing their attack even without central coordination. Powell made another decision. Ms. Nelson, prepare your team for ground deployment. We're going to help those colonists. The first phase of their mission was complete. The Varnak's fleet was in disarray, but the battle for Proxima Centauri was far from over. Security Chief Patricia Nelson led her team to the shuttle bay. Her 12 soldiers moved with quick efficiency, checking their weapons and equipment one final time before boarding. We drop in 5 minutes, she told them. Our mission is to secure the mining complex and protect the survivors until we can evacuate them. The Nemesis had positioned itself in low orbit above the Parker colony. Below, the once thriving settlement was now mostly rubble. Scattered fires burned across the landscape, sending columns of smoke into the atmosphere. Captain Powell's voice came through the comm system. Chief Nelson, sensors show approximately 30 Varnak's ground units still active near the mine entrance. They seem disorganized but are still attacking. Understood, Captain. We'll handle them. Nelson boarded the shuttle last, taking her position near the front. The craft was military grade, heavily armored and armed with pulse cannons. It would get them to the surface fast and provide covering fire if needed. Launch when ready, she told the pilot. The shuttle dropped from the Nemesis, accelerating toward the planet below. Through the viewport, Nelson could see the confused Varnak's fleet. Some ships drifted aimlessly. Others fired on each other. A few had begun to retreat from the system entirely. The dimensional inverter worked better than expected, commented one of her soldiers. Nelson nodded. Let's hope our luck holds. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Powell watched the tactical display. The shuttle was marked as a small green dot, racing toward the surface. Keep us in position to provide cover, she ordered, and continue targeting any Varnax ships that look like they're regrouping. Morris worked at the weapons station. Captain, several enemy vessels are still functional. Their crews seem to be operating independently now, but they're dangerous. Pick your targets carefully. We need to conserve ammunition. Douglas approached Powell's chair. Captain, I have a suggestion. We should try to capture one of the disabled Varnax ships. The intelligence value would be enormous. Powell considered this. It's risky, but you're right. We need to understand our enemy better, especially now that we've seen how effective the inverter is. She tapped her comm. Chief Martinez, how are our power levels? Stabilizing, Captain, came the reply from engineering. The reactor cooling systems are catching up. We could manage a tractor beam if needed. Good. Stand by. Powell turned to Douglas. Find me a suitable target. Something small enough to manage but intact enough to study. Douglas returned to his station, scanning the nearby vessels. There, he said after a moment. That scout ship. It's drifting with minimal power. Signatures. Looks like the crew might be incapacitated. Powell studied the image on screen. The vessel was much smaller than the others, perhaps 200 meters long. Its organic-looking hull showed damage from the battle, but it remained largely intact. Mr. Morris, target that vessel with the tractor beam. Once it's secure, Chief Nelson can send part of her team to board it after the ground mission is complete. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, descending rapidly toward the mining complex. Smoke and dust made visibility poor, but the pilot navigated confidently using sensor data. Ground forces in sight, he reported. 37 Varnax units surrounding the mine entrance. Nelson looked at the tactical display. The Varnax moved erratically, no longer showing the perfect coordination they were known for. But they were still attacking the sealed mine doors, with energy weapons and what looked like organic cutting tools. Set us down behind that ridge, she ordered. We'll approach on foot for the final assault. The shuttle landed with a soft thump. Nelson's team disembarked quickly, forming into 3 strike groups. They moved silently through the ruined landscape, using the broken buildings for cover. From her position, Nelson could now see the Varnax clearly. They were insectoid in appearance, standing about 7 feet tall on 4 rear legs, with 2 smaller limbs near the front that held weapons. Their exoskeletons gleamed with a metallic blue sheen in the planet's harsh sunlight. Team 1, left flank. Team 2, right flank. Team 3 with me, straight up the middle, she ordered through her helmet comm. Synchronized attack on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The human soldiers opened fire simultaneously. High-energy pulses struck the Varnax from 3 directions. Several fell immediately, their exoskeletons cracking under the assault. The remaining aliens turned to face this new threat, their movements uncoordinated but still dangerous. They returned fire with green energy beams that melted the ground, where they struck. Nelson rolled behind a fallen wall section, then rose to fire again. Her shots found their target, a Varnax aiming at one of her soldiers. The alien collapsed, its legs folding beneath it. The battle was brief, but intense. Within minutes, all the Varnax lay dead or dying. Nelson's team had suffered only minor injuries, protected by their advanced armor. Secure the perimeter, she ordered. Mace and Harris, get those mine doors open. The 2 soldiers approached the massive steel doors that sealed the mine entrance. They attached a small device to the control panel. Colony emergency override, Mason reported. Should open in 30 seconds, Nelson scanned the sky. Stay alert, there could be more of them. With a grinding sound, the mine doors began to open. From within, frightened faces appeared. Human colonists, dirty and exhausted, looked out cautiously. United Earth Security Forces, Nelson called out. We're here to evacuate you. A man stepped forward, his clothes marking him as a colony official. Thank God, he said, his voice hoarse. We thought no one was coming. The Varnax hit us without warning. We lost thousands in the first hour. How many survivors? Nelson asked. Just over 3,000. Mostly miners who were below ground when the attack came. We've been hiding down there for nearly 28 hours. Nelson nodded. We have a ship in orbit. We'll begin evacuation. Immediately, she tapped her comm. Captain Powell, the ground is secure. We have approximately 3,000 survivors ready for evacuation. Good work, Chief, came Powell's reply. We're sending all available shuttles, but be advised, we're detecting another Varnax force approaching your position from the north. Looks like a ground transport that survived our attack. Nelson turned to the colony official. We need to move quickly. Get your people organized into groups of 50. Prioritize children and injured first. As the colonists began to emerge from the mine, Nelson positioned her team to defend the evacuation zone. In the distance, she could see dust clouds rising, the eye, approaching Varnax reinforcements. Mason set up the heavy pulse cannon on that ridge. Harris deployed the drone sentries to give us early warning. The first shuttle from the Nemesis appeared in the sky, descending toward the cleared area Nelson had designated as a landing zone. Captain, she reported. Evacuation beginning now. First shuttle on the ground. Back on the Nemesis, Powell coordinated the rescue operation while keeping watch on the disabled Varnax fleet. Most ships remained adrift, but a few showed signs of recovery. Mr. Douglas, what's the status of our captured vessel? Douglas checked his readings. Secure in the tractor. Beam, Captain. Life support appears functional, but we're not detecting much movement inside. Prepare a boarding party. I want that ship secured before the Varnax regain their coordination. Daniel spoke up from the communication station. Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity from the Hive coordinator, some kind of energy buildup. Powell turned sharply. On screen, the main display showed the massive Varnax command ship. Though still drifting, its surface had begun to pulse with energy again, different from before, more chaotic, but definitely building. They're attempting to reset their network, Douglas said, studying the readings. If they succeed, they could regain control of their fleet. Powell made her decision quickly. Mr. Morris, target the coordinator with all remaining conventional weapons. We need to destroy it completely. Morris nodded. Targeting solution locked, missiles armed and ready. Fire. The Nemesis launched its full arsenal at the Hive coordinator. The missiles streaked across space, impacting the massive vessel in succession. Explosions bloomed across its hull, tearing open vast sections. The energy buildup faltered, then surged erratically. Direct hits, Morris reported. But it's still active. Powell watched the screen intently. Target their power core if you can identify it. Working on it, Captain. The battle wasn't over yet. The Nemesis had struck a critical blow, but the Varnax were trying to adapt. The race to save humanity continued. The Nemesis shuddered as another explosion rocked the Hive coordinator. Chunks of the massive alien vessel broke apart, drifting into space. Yet somehow, the core of the ship remained intact, the strange pulsing energy still building. Our conventional weapons aren't enough, Morris reported from the weapons station. Whatever powers that ship, it's incredibly resilient. Powell considered their options. The dimensional inverter had disrupted the Varnax network, but destroying the coordinator completely required more firepower than they had left. Dr. Murray, she called over the comm, could we modify the inverter for a second attack? Something more focused? In engineering, Murray exchanged looks with Martinez. Possibly, she replied, but we'd need to reconfigure the entire system, and it would require all our remaining power. How long? 20 minutes at least. And Captain, there's another problem. A second firing might overload the system entirely. We'd lose the Phantom drive. Powell understood what that meant. Without the Phantom drive, they couldn't return to Earth. They'd be stranded in enemy territory. Begin reconfiguration, she ordered, and Mr. Morris, continue targeting any weak points you can find. Douglas approached Powell's chair. Captain, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the coordinator. There's something unusual about its structure. The central section doesn't match what we'd expect from Varnax technology. Explain. The Varnax ships all show similar design principles, organic-mechanical hybrid systems, but the core of the coordinator is different. It's almost as if it wasn't built by the Varnax at all. Powell studied the images on the tactical display. Douglas was right. The innermost section of the alien vessel had a different appearance, more angular, less organic. A different technology? Stolen from another species, perhaps? Douglas nodded. That's my theory. And if I'm right, it might explain how they've managed to defeat so many advanced civilizations. They're using technology they don't fully understand but have managed to control. Powell tapped her comm again. Dr. Murray, focus your analysis on the central core of the coordinator. It may be key to defeating them. On the planet's surface, the evacuation continued. 3 shuttles had already departed for the Nemesis, carrying nearly 200 colonists. But the approaching Varnax ground force was getting closer. 5 minutes until they reach our position, Mason reported to Nelson. She nodded. We hold the line until the last colonist is evacuated. No exceptions. The colony official approached her. We have a problem. There are still over 100 people in the deepest mining shaft. They're trapped by a collapsed section. Nelson made a quick decision. Harris, Perry with me. We're going in to get them out. The rest of you, maintain the perimeter. She followed, the official into the mine. The tunnels were dark, lit only by emergency lighting. They descended quickly, passing frightened groups of colonists waiting for their turn to evacuate. After several minutes, they reached the collapsed section. On the other side, voices called for help. Stand back, Nelson ordered. She attached small charges to specific points along the fallen rocks. Shape charges. They'll clear the path without causing another collapse. The explosion was controlled and precise. Dust filled the air, but when it cleared, a pathway had opened. Behind it, a group of miners and their families huddled together, some injured but alive. United Earth Security Forces, Nelson announced. We're getting you out. They guided the colonists back through the tunnels toward the surface. As they emerged into daylight, Nelson saw that the situation had changed. The heavy pulse cannon was firing continuously at an advancing line of Varnax ground troops. Shuttles incoming, one of her soldiers called out. 2 minutes. Get these people to the landing zone, Nelson ordered. Everyone else, defensive positions. The battle for the colony would be decided in the next few minutes. In the captured Varnax scout ship, the boarding party moved cautiously through alien corridors. The vessel's interior was strange. Part mechanical, part biological, with surfaces that seemed almost alive. Leading the team, Lieutenant Sam Baker kept his weapon ready. Life signs ahead, he reported. One signal, very weak. They entered what appeared to be the bridge. Lying on the floor was a Varnax, its exoskeleton cracked and leaking a bluish fluid. But something was different about this alien. Around its head and spine, a strange growth pulsed faintly. What is that? One of the team members asked, pointing at the growth. Baker moved closer, scanning the alien with a handheld device. It's not part of the Varnax, it's a separate organism. He tapped his comm. Captain Powell, we found something you need to see. On the Nemesis bridge, Powell watched as Baker's video feed showed the injured Varnax with its strange parasite. The parasite is connected directly to the Varnax's nervous system, Baker explained. It seems to be controlling it somehow. Douglas leaned forward, his expression shocked. That's it. The Varnax aren't the real enemy. They're being controlled by these parasites. Powell immediately understood the implications. That's why the dimensional inverter worked. It didn't just disrupt their communications, it disrupted the control these parasites have over the Varnax. Murray's voice came over the comm. Captain, the inverter reconfiguration is complete. But I've been studying the coordinator's core. If Douglas is right about it being different technology, we might be able to target the control system specifically. Do it, Powell ordered. Focus all remaining power on that core. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The dimensional inverter activated, again this time with a more focused beam. It struck the coordinator's central core with pinpoint accuracy. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the pulsing energy throughout the Varnax fleet suddenly stopped. Direct hit, Morris reported. The energy signature is collapsing. On the main screen, the coordinator began to break apart from within. But rather than explosive destruction, it was more like a controlled shutdown. Throughout the system, the remaining Varnak ships went completely dark. What's happening? Powell asked. Douglas studied his readings. The parasites, they're dying. Without the coordinator, they can't maintain their control. On the planet's surface, the advancing Varnak's troops suddenly stopped. One by one, they collapsed to the ground, their movements ceasing entirely. Nelson watched in confusion. What just happened? Her comm activated. Chief Nelson, this is Captain Powell. The threat has been neutralized. Continue evacuation, but be advised, the Varnaks themselves may no longer be hostile. The real enemy was controlling them. Hours later, the last shuttle docked with the Nemesis. All survivors from the Parker colony had been evacuated. The ship was crowded now, with temporary quarters established in cargo bays and maintenance areas. On the bridge, Powell received the final reports. The Phantom drive is beyond repair, Martinez told her. We used every bit of power we had for that last attack. Powell nodded. What about conventional engines? Functional, but it would take us nearly 3 years to reach Earth that way. Then that's what we'll do, Powell decided. We'll send a message drone back through Phantom space to let Earth know what happened. In the meantime, we'll study what we've learned about the Varnaks and these parasites. Douglas approached with a data pad. We've downloaded information from the captured scout ship. It's going to take time to translate fully, but the initial findings are fascinating. The Varnak civilization was peaceful before the parasites arrived. They were farmers and traders, not warriors. How many other species might have been enslaved this way, Powell wondered. Many, according to these records. The parasites have been spreading for centuries, using each conquered species to attack the next. Powell looked at the main screen, where the remains of the Varnak's fleet drifted harmlessly. Then we haven't just saved humanity. We may have liberated countless other civilizations as well. As the Nemesis set course for the long journey home, Powell made her final log entry for the day. The galactic terror has ceased, not through destruction, but through understanding. We came expecting to fight monsters only to find victims. Now we face a new challenge, helping the Varnaks rebuild and introducing them to a galaxy that has feared them for generations. Our mission has changed, but our purpose remains the same, to protect life in all its forms. The single human warship had done what entire fleets could not. It had brought peace to the stars.